to yet another exciting episodes of Global Event. And I, Manali Chaudhary Shengupta, your host. I welcome you all to this beautiful session. And today we are going to talk about build your future, chart your career. And this name suggests that we are going to have some really interesting session here, and we are doing this session in association with the Wheels Global Foundation. And we are having this entire event from National Digital Library of India platform. So before we go into the today's session or seminar, whatever you say, just have a quick look at National Digital Library, because I know the most of the students, those who join us, they are, they follow National Digital Library very well. So just to let them know, and also my new viewer, that what we have accomplished so far and what we are going to have in our mind for coming days. So as you can see, the concept is one India, one digital library. That is how we began, and we want to create a national knowledge asset, which should have education, research, innovation, and knowledge asset, everything under one umbrella. So that was the concept, and it is a single window platform providing learning resources that make e-learning and education accessible to all. Actually, we are trying to democratize the entire education system in India, and we initiated the project in 2025, right? And the NDLI portal was nationally launched, as you can see, in this June 2018, and successfully we have completed phase 1, 2, and 3, and still we are continuing this phase. As you can see that we are available both in your, you can access us in your phone, laptop, desktop, everywhere. And you can see that you have your pocket digital library with us, I mean with you, all of you. And what we have, I mean, Nendela, it's a digital library, as I mentioned. So it is very important to know that what we have, the total content is 14.5 crore, as you can see. Many of them are nationally licensed contents. The figure is 6.5 lakhs. And many content providers are actually helping us to build this digital library. And then the figure is 650 providers, content providers. Users 1.5 crore, and we have set up almost 7,500 NDLI club across India, and that's a big success for all of us. And contents available in India, in NDLI, is in 39 Indian languages out of 423 languages in NDLI as a platform. And searching available in 14 Indian languages, contents covering various subjects, disciplines, and also the different educational level from KG, I mean kindergarten, to postgraduate and beyond, and also for the lifelong learners. And currently provide cloud hosting facility to 31 institutions, which is great because we are hosting their institutional digital repository, that we call them IDR, and we are hosting all these IDR in our own cloud system. And remote accessible assistance we have given to 150 institutions, you know having challenges with idea, that we have already helped them to go for this idea system. And we have conduct some different sort of programs on behalf of NDLI club, workshops, training sessions, global events. And our main motive is to help the nation and help our stakeholders. So as I mentioned, that we are there in website, application, mobile application, and that is a service we provide NDLI club, also an idea. uh, Again, I am mentioning it's an institutional digital repository system. It's a very kind of in system, and every institution needs to have their own idea system very soon. And ministry is going to make it mandatory for all the HAIs across India. And we are providing training sessions, awareness programs on NDLI as well. So NDLI club, I will not go into very detail, but it is important to know for all institutions, schools, to have NDLI club. It's a platform where you can perform different sorts of activity oriented programs, I mean, where you can put emphasis on activity oriented learning. And this is very important to promote the habit of learning and reading. And here you can use NDLI's vast resources, and these indeed help the students to sharpen their skills and also personality. And it is a kind of a mandate. It was mentioned in NEP 2020, and that is how we are providing you this NDLI Club platform. And as you can see that Maharashtra still today it is standing as top in the chart, and Maharashtra is doing brilliantly in terms of formation of NDLI Club. And we could see some good awareness among people of southern India also about this digital learning promotion, as well as National Digital Library of India. And you can see the awareness session we have done 850 plus, and many online offline sessions we have taken. International workshops we have done with 4, national workshops where we visited, that is also 5 plus, and idea workshops we have done so far 32. So this is our the contribution in terms of taking sessions and awareness, and these are the accolades, awards that NDLI and NDLI Club both have received from different the organizations in different time. And most of the awards we got during the time of pandemic, the way we serve the society and community. So, what we want to achieve with the whole idea is that we should learn, share, and grow together with our own contribution. And that's all. I mean, that is how we want to see NDLI and NDLI Club. And as I mentioned, that today's event is going to be very, very interesting. We are going to talk about your career, your future, and how you need to plan out certain things to achieve some things in life. And to take the session forward, I would like to uh, welcome Shujata Di. I always call her Shujata Di, Shujata Roy. This event is always possible because of her, and she is very prominent figure both for NDLI and also Wheels Global Foundation. So Shujata Di has done MSc in Physics from IIT Kharagpur, postgraduate in Computer Science from Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata, CQA from Quality Assurance Institute, USA, and she spent most of her career in the corporate IT sector, working with various private and multinational organizations till she finally retired from IBM as GM, General Manager of the organization. And after retirement, she is doing, lots of IIT Kharagpur's alumni activities, and also she's into voluntary activities, and she's trying to give back something to the society, and she's doing it brilliantly. And Shujata Roy, she's a board member of Wheels Global Foundation, India, and chairperson of its East chapter, and has also served as the chief operating officer of NDLI for 8 years, and still she is uh, associated with us. Shujata Di, warm welcome to this session, and now the platform is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Manali, for that kind introduction. I really feel humbled. So I also feel very honored to be introducing our today's speaker, Mr. Ashish Deo, for who is going to be whom we are going to listen to for the next 45 minutes or so. To introduce Ashish, he is an alumnus of IIT Bombay and IIM Ahmedabad, and is based in London. Ashish retired as Senior Advisor, Commercial Solutions at Gain, where he played a pivotal role in advancing nutrition-focused commercial solutions and driving initiatives aimed at increasing access to healthier diets. Ashish began his career in brand management at Procter & Gamble in India before moving to the UK in late 1993, working as a marketing consultant to consumer goods companies in the Middle East and East European markets. Since then, he has moved through different roles across the country as a marketing consultant, building expertise in marketing, business strategy, and commercial growth, and finally leading nutrition and sustainability initiatives to improve nutrition in developing countries. Ashish is the Vice President, Marketing at Wheels Global Foundation and adds to the global leadership bench of wheels. So welcome to the session, Ashish, and we do look forward to listening to you over the next 45 minutes or so.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, now as we move to the main session, the topic for the session for today is Build Your Future, Chart Your Career. Charting your career path involves first identifying your interests, your passions, something that you think you will enjoy doing. When I look at our times, our choices were so limited. We had only the choice of becoming a doctor, an engineer, a teacher, or at the most a lawyer. We couldn't think beyond those. But now, when we look at the current era, opportunities are abundant, sky is the limit, and that makes it all the more difficult for today's students to make a choice. So, how should one go about it? Should one opt for a knowledge based career like being a teacher, or a skills based career like being an electrician, a chef, or maybe an entrepreneur based career like starting a startup? Or should one simply try a freelancing career like a contract photographer, graphic designer, etc.? These are some obvious questions that I'm sure will be coming to your mind when talking about building your career. And that is what our today's sessions will be dealing with. I'm sure many of your questions will be answered here. So before moving on to our speaker, here is a message for the audience. As we move through the session, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and our speaker will be answering those during the Q&A time. Okay, now coming to Ashish Dev. Ashish, given the background that I've just mentioned, what do you think is shifting in the world that our today's audience needs to be aware of?
Thanks, Sujata, and thank you to the NDLI team for inviting me. It's an honor and privilege to be able to have this contribute to this session. So as you started mentioning, Sujata, I think today people are feeling a little bit anxious. And this number that I found from one of the studies in India, that 80% of the Gen Z professionals, these are people who are already in the market, they are not students like our audience, they are feeling a little bit unprepared for what the future holds. And I sense this in a lot of other media stories that we hear, not just in India, but frankly, everywhere in the world. And what has happened is that while the choice has become very wide, and as you were saying, in the old days, people could only look at some very limited number of options, and very often those options were dependent on who you and your family knew, because those were the sources of information. Now, what has happened is that these sources of opportunities have obviously become much, much wider. But what has fortunately also happened, and NDLI is a very good example of this, is that the way to access the relevant information has also improved dramatically. So you don't need to be dependent on just your family, your friends, or those you know personally to be on the source of information. The other thing which is happening is that technology seems to touch everything these days. Yeah? You don't have to be an engineer or a software specialist or a hardware specialist or whatever in order to be affected by tech. People who work in banks are dependent on tech. People who work in medical field are dependent on tech. People who work in law are dependent on tech. So, I have a friend's daughter who has just graduated from the National Law School in Kolkata. And she was mentioning that this profession called paralegal, who people, do the basic work in any law firm, that work is gradually getting replaced by AI.
Machine.
Because junior lawyers can now do a lot of that searching themselves because more and more information is possible. So I don't think there is any field that is left untouched by tech. And I think that is what worries people, because they think, oh, I'm not a tech kind of person. And if tech is touching everything, how will I survive? And this is where, to me, the first big message comes in, that we are moving from a world which used to define you by your degree. So if you did a degree in commerce, then you were supposed to be suitable for certain kind of jobs. If you did a degree in engineering, then you were supposed to be suitable for certain kind of jobs. And the world has moved on. The world has moved on to a situation where what people are looking for are skills. And obviously, the subject you study defines some of the skills that you have, but those are not the only skills you are able to use to build a career. So I think if I were to sum up this part of the conversation, then uh, there is a challenge of looking at lots of opportunities, but there is also the potential to find more about those opportunities and understand what is required. And there is the other positive, which is that you're not constrained just by your degree. You can look at, and this is a interesting way to look at this, that depending on uh, what sort of area is of interest, you can look at a lot of the things on this article. For example, there was just one National School of Design in our time in Ahmedabad. But now there are multiple design schools in IITs and other places, and design has become a pretty significant profession. Similarly, what we call influencers are in some ways performing arts of some kind. They're performing on Instagram or whatever, but that didn't used to exist. So just as some doors are closing, other doors are opening. And you don't have to be a technologist to be a user of Instagram. You just have to be a skilled user. And that's a change, that technology has become much, much more accessible. In the old days, you needed to know how to write a program. You don't need to know how to write a program. So I think those are some of the shifts that have created some sort of challenges, but the same shifts have also, these are two sides of the same coin, so to speak. I hope that helps.
Yeah, sure. So what you're saying is, yes, there has been a shift, definitely the way we look at it. But of course, again, moving along with the shift is also simpler because there's a lot of information there, and you can just chart your own path based on the information available. So, so is there, what could be, let's say, the basis for being optimistic in this situation for the future for our
Sure.
students today?
So this is a framework that has stood the test of time, uh, because it is a very simple way to think about it, that you are typically likely to be good at doing something well that you are fundamentally interested in. Yeah. Because if you like art and you are being forced to do something more routine like a clerical job, then the chances are sooner or later your lack of interest is going to show up in your performance. Yeah. So the interest is the first thing, and it takes time for people to figure out what are they truly interested in, and these interests can change over time. You don't remain the same person that you may have been at 8 and now at 16 and then going on to 25 or 30. But it's important to take a conscious look at understanding, what am I interested in, what keeps me engaged even when nobody's putting any pressure on me. So I'm driven by my own self to take interest. So that's the most important part, and that's genuinely totally in your control. Yeah. Nobody can tell you to be interested in A or B. It's your decision. The second area is, what are you good at? So just because you're interested in something doesn't mean that you are good at that. Yeah, you need to work hard to typically become. Having interest makes it more possible to put in the hard work. So, for example, let's take medicine. Just because you're interested in, say, surgery, doesn't make you a good surgeon. Most really good surgeons invest hours of practice in order to become good at that. Yeah. Even Dr. Shetty, who is the famous example on this, he got where he is by working really hard, because partly that profession involves, being responsible for somebody's life or health. So that's obviously a good motivation, but also skills develop through practice. If you don't practice, your skills are not going to become better. So don't rely on this notion that, simply because I'm interested in something and simply because I have an aptitude for it, I'm going to become good at it. And virtually no subject is free from this. Yeah. So just because you're good at communication doesn't mean you will, just because you are interested in communication doesn't mean that you will become good at communication. You need to work hard, because you might be very good at talking to one kind of people, but are you good at talking to many different kinds of people? So that's kind of the box called strength. So interest is what you're genuinely motivated by. Strength is what you're good at doing. And then the third thing is the reality of the workspace. That where is the demand? Yeah. What are people today looking for? So, for example, when I was young, there were very few people interested in this topic called wildlife. Yeah. Maybe some people became forest rangers or joined the Indian Forest Service or things like that. But wildlife was an exotic thing. Mainly the people who you looked at in National Geographic and those kind of things were mainly foreign names, and an odd exception from India who might be featuring there. But today, there is a large number of people who are not only interested in wildlife, they have built careers in wildlife. Yeah. So all these tiger reserves and people who work in them, people who have built careers as tourist guides in these places, all these things didn't exist. So, a demand keeps shifting in the economy. Things which were there before sometimes go away, and new things come in their place. So, for example, cotton mills in Mumbai is a classic example of our times, that in the early 80s, due to lots of different things happening in the world, the cotton mills in Bombay started shutting one after the other because they became unviable economically. And there was a really difficult period of adjustment where a lot of these people who had spent 10, 20, 30 years working in cotton mills, they just didn't know how to find another job because they had devoted their entire lives to working in one kind of thing. But unfortunately, that is the reality of life. Yeah. Industries are born and industries die. Work areas are come up, but other work areas die. So it's important to understand where is the demand shifting and figuring out how these three things align. So what you're interested in, what you're good at, and where are people offering jobs. Once you figure out, and as I keep on emphasizing, this is not a static situation. Yep. Because you evolve as a person, exposure to things helps you understand, I was interested in X, but I'm now more interested in a subsection of X because that subsection seems much more interesting, but you didn't know enough about that. So as you grow older and you get more exposure, your interest can change. Similarly, practice makes perfect, as they say. So, just because you were not good at something 5 years ago, if you have consciously made an effort to work hard on that, you could develop a strength in a new area. So don't think of this as something which is defined forever. You have some control. You don't have control on demand, because demand is coming from the environment, the economy, and what's happening. But you do have control on interest and strength. I hope that helps in terms of answering that part of the question.
Sure, sure, it does. When you talked about this interest and identifying your interest, it reminds me of my life, my career. I did BSc and MSc in physics from IIT Kharagpur. And after 5 years of doing physics, I realized that was not my interest area. And then I went for computer science, which was very, very new at the time. I took again a course in computer science. I did my degree, and then I stuck to computer science for the rest of my life. So it really, you don't know. I mean, unless you have really got into it, you won't know what exactly is your interest area. Demand and all, of course, that comes later, and that you need to find out.
Indeed.
Okay.
And, if I look at some of the things that you can do to discover what is likely to be of interest to you and what you might be good at, then you have some options. So, for example, discovering interest can be done by getting involved in different types of extracurricular activities. And they can be related to a subject, they can be not related to the subject you're studying. For example, many people in IIT Bombay discovered mountaineering for the first time in their lives, because where they came from, there was no organized effort to do hikes and things like that. But some of them went on to become proper professional mountaineers. That was not their job, but they devote a considerable amount of time and energy to doing that. So that's one example. Given the importance of technology, and particularly the digital technology today, it's important to identify one aspect of this digital world that seems to be relevant to the areas you're interested in, and that might help you develop your strength. Yep. And the example of that is, if you wish to work in the area of marketing, then understanding how communication process is changing is an important part. So, for example, when I started marketing, there were just 2 television channels in India. Today, there are some 400 at least that carry advertising. There may be another few which are specialists and don't carry advertising. So obviously, the nature of communication has changed. People don't watch TV programs when they are broadcast. Very often, they catch up later. So live television has no longer remained as prominent in people's lives. People are very often catching via YouTube or some box that they have at home, and they can play shows whenever they want. So obviously, this means that the audiences are fragmented, and you need to communicate. So understanding that is an important part if you're going to be interested. So that's the second part. Just as the multiplicity of options has made life difficult, advent of platforms like NDIL and LinkedIn have also made it possible for you to connect with people. And it is perfectly possible to connect with people and request them for help. If you ask somebody, give me a job, then they are going to feel very awkward, because that's a very difficult request to fulfill. But most people, if you approach them with a request of saying, you work in this area, I wish to understand a bit more, because this may be something that I want to do. Are you willing to spare a little bit of time to help me understand what this is? I can bet you that 7 out of 10 people will find some way to give you time, because they have been in that place before. Most of us, as we grow, we realize that we were there before, and therefore a request for help, wherever possible, people respond. So that's another possibility. One of the ways you can show your strength is to have some kind of physical proof. So it may be a prototype you have developed as an engineer or somebody interested in building things. It can be an artwork that you have, your portfolio. that you've created, a blog that you've written if you're interested in journalism. So whatever it is, because in addition to your claim and your ability to talk about it, helping people show something tangible just makes them helps them understand your story. So, and then the last point is what I was saying in terms of be flexible, be open, because as the world changes, you need to be prepared to change. If the world is changing and you want to remain exactly where you are, sooner or later, unfortunately, you will be left behind. And that's just the harsh reality of life. And let's take the example of coal mines in UK. So the entire industrial revolution in UK in the 17th century was possible due to coal and steam. James Watt invented the steam engine, and that steam became the source of power. And because UK had coal, they were able to use that power to industrialize first and became the dominant power. But in 1980s, Margaret Thatcher systematically shut down coal mines because they had become unviable. Other sources of energy had come up like gas and oil, which were much cheaper, cleaner, and more economical. So a lot of these coal miners were out of a job, just like the example of the cotton mills in Mumbai, I said. So unfortunately, the world does change, and you need to be keeping an open mind to sort of reflect on this. And that's why, to me, if I can summarize this section, important to remember that you are in charge. Nobody knows you better than yourself. Of course, your parents can help. Of course, your teachers can help. Of course, your friends and family can help. But their role is to help. Your role is to do. And your role is to realize that ultimately I'm responsible. Once you realize that, then things become a bit easier. And yes, the range of options has become enormously wide, but so has the range of information sources to understand them and help you choose. And the third thing is get used to discomfort. Yeah, because when things change, none of us finds it easy. Yeah? And similarly, when you are starting your exploration, if let's say you're 16, 17, 18 years old, and you're saying, it's really hard for me to figure out what I really find interesting. That's okay. Don't give up. Spend some time, make an effort. And as I say, your answer can change, just like Sujata's answer changed. She invested 5 years in doing BSc and MSc, and then realized that it was not. So you then spend time in developing what you do find interesting. So if in a typical human life, 1 or 2 years or even 5 years is not as big a deal as we make it out to be. Yeah. So don't feel constrained that, oh God, I have already done 2 years of this. What do I do now? Yeah. In a lifespan of 60, 70 years, 2 years is not a big deal. And don't forget that people are now working longer and longer. Yeah. So yes, there may be an official retirement age of 60, but people are in pretty good physical condition to continue working till 65 or 70, depending on what they do. So you have a 40, 50-year range of working life. So what if 2 years, unfortunately, turned out to have been somewhat misdirected or were not the most useful? So don't be constrained by that, and be prepared to change and be comfortable with some degree of unease, and take time to discover. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I think that really makes sense. So, having said whatever I heard from you all this time and all this background, do you think it would need now a critical mindset change for the students of today going forward?
Absolutely, because I think one of the things which has changed is people in our generation, and even those who say graduated up to 10 years ago or 15 years ago, used to think that I will probably remain with the same employer or at the most 2 or 3 employers for my entire working life. Or even if that wasn't the case, they expected that I would basically keep doing roughly the same kind of thing. Yeah. So if you did finance, then you did accounting and moved into senior jobs, but the area of work more or less remained the same. Yeah. What has happened due to the changing nature of the world and technology is that certainty, that predictability has unfortunately reduced. Yeah. And that is why the point earlier I made about the skills. You know, if you have a certain number of skills, then it is possible to see how those skills can be adapted a little bit and applied to a different situation. But if you define yourself by your degree or by a label like I'm an engineer, so I only do engineering, or I'm an accountant or a CA, and therefore I will only do that, then the chances are that you will not be able to uh, realize or use the opportunities that might be available. Yeah. So, for example, the legal thing I pointed out, some people are seeing it as a real threat. Yeah. Because the legal profession, just like say consulting, is like a steep pyramid. Yeah. There are a few very senior people at the top. Then there is this middling layer, and then there is a huge layer of the juniors. Yeah. Now, if technology starts replacing these junior jobs, 2 challenges arise. One is what happens to these people? But more importantly, the second question is where do the new people come to rise to the next 2 levels? Both because those next 2 levels are ultimately, being fed from the bottom as new people enter the. So all professions face this kind of a challenge. But if you realize that what AI technology is doing is taking some of the repetitive work away, then you just redesign the training program. Yeah. And yes, it may be that instead of requiring a ratio of 1,000 junior lawyers to 100 middle to 10 top, those ratios might change. Yeah. But what will also change is the nature of the job at each of these 3 levels. Yeah. And if you are not prepared to shift to that changing nature of the job, the chances are you will become unhappy and also probably not perform as well compared to those who are willing to shift. So, and this is partly again in your control, because uh, very often there is a saying which says that what happens may not be in your control, but how you react to what happens is very much within your control. Yep. So if you learn to control your reaction, and again, it's perfectly natural to feel afraid, to feel scared when change is rapid. Yeah. Don't be worried about that, but don't stop there. Do something to say, okay, it is making me feel concerned that my skills are might not be relevant. What can I do about it? That is where the shift comes. That as long as you keep reminding yourself that you have some options, you can do something about it. It will help you adjust to this reality, which a lot of people feel, and especially if you speak to your parents' generation, because they were able to live in a much more predictable world, they feel perhaps even more anxious than you do. But that's fine. They lived their lives in a certain era and in a certain set of circumstances. So they were able to live it in one way. You guys are entering the world when the world has changed and things are shifting. So it's an important thing to realize that very often these things are kind of inside you and how you look at them, rather than always feeling like a victim of circumstances. Yeah? Yes, circumstances can be challenging, but you can do something about it. So go back to yourself, go back to inside, and think about how you are looking at things.
Right, excellent. I think, Shishia, especially you just talked about that lawyer example. The same is happening in the IT sector. We don't need coders anymore. So the people who had just learned coding, now they are feeling very, very scared that what do they do? So it is the time when they have to, and this is what I like about the one of the key takeaways that you mentioned. You are in charge of figuring out what's right for you. So you need to decide what can you do. Take that step. You had learned something, unlearn that, and relearn. Use the same AI tools that who are now taking up your coding job. Use those tools to do something new, something different. So, and that change in mindset, what you rightly said, you have to keep all your doors open and make sure that yes, you are open to take the challenges of the future. So thank you so much, Ashish. I think that was, I'm sure the audience here today have found it very, very useful. There's nothing to be scared of. Life is not easy, as you mentioned. Who said life is easy? But it is again in your control what you can do. So take that step, have that belief and confidence in you, and you can really move forward. With this, I would like to hand over to Manali and take you to the Q&A session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Shujatadi. And it was wonderful session. And my takeaway would be, you can be afford to be afraid, yes, but of course be comfortable to the changes. Changes will come, certainly, but we should not be afraid of those changes. But we have to be ready, and we have to also, take the risks in life. But before that, it is very important to be more courageous within, and also, your mindset is going to take you somewhere. That is very important. So the entire life journey is learning, unlearning, and relearning. So, I mean, that is my today's takeaway, and it's wonderful. I mean, the what we had, and I was just trying to see the kind of viewers we had, and the number is also today very, very good. So I am sure that my readers are, I mean, my viewers are also enjoying today's session. So very quickly, I would like to take up the questions. Yeah, you can see that Gobindo Shatra, which skill are most important for career success? I mean, this is the first question that we got from him. Which
Sure.
skills are most important for career success?
So I guess the best way to look at this kind of question is to think in terms of a few types of skills. Yeah. Very often people make the mistake of focusing only on what I would call functional or technical skills. Yeah. But it's equally important to remember that even if you're working as an engineer on a shop floor or working as an architect in a design studio, you work with others. Yeah. You rarely work on your own. And therefore, softer skills like building relationships, communicating effectively, being a team player, those are as important as knowing how to do the technical part of your job. Yeah? So if you want to be a good journalist, of course you need to be able to write well. Yeah? Or if you're doing a video journalism, then being able to present well. But you are not going to get the stories if you don't know how to cultivate your sources, how to persuade them to come to you first, so that you get the scoop. So in every single line of work, it's always useful to remember that the relevant technical functional skill is an important part. But unless you also focus on the surrounding softer skills, you can call them interpersonal skills, or you can call them, people skills, whatever the term that matters or feels comfortable to you. Don't ignore those. Very often that those are the things which people don't tend to pay a lot of attention to. And you have plenty of opportunities to learn these. So for example, I know this might not be the representative for everybody on the call, but if you play a sport, especially a team sport, that's one of the best ways to learn teamwork. Yeah? Because in team sport, you win by everybody doing their assigned job. and people doing it together. You don't win by being one brilliant performer. Sometimes you might, but by and large, the team is important. So there are ways to learn these skills. Similarly, if you living in a hostel, yeah, uh, enjoying that life is about learning to live with many different types of people. Some people will be similar to you, some people will be quite different from you, but you learn to live. You learn to enjoy their company or at least tolerate their company. That's an important part of. So, not all skills are learned through books. Many skills are learned through living. And but if you make it a conscious effort, one of the biggest skills that very often is missing is clear communication. And it doesn't really matter what kind of a worker you are. If you are communicating with people, the clearer your communication, whether it is written or verbal, the more effective you will be. Because if people understand you, they'll be able to react better. So communication skills are very often underappreciated. So I hope that helps. It's very difficult for me to answer the technical skills because they vary by the time. But these non-technical things are sometimes actually the real difference between success and failure.
Skills. So, this was the first question, and second question we got: how can a non-STEM background students have any existence in this world of AI and ML, as the Indian diaspora and the society only
Yes.
emphasis on doctors, engineer, and government jobs? So that's a good question indeed.
So to me, this boils down to not being constrained by how the society thinks. Yeah. If you are clear that you don't want to be an engineer or a doctor, or you don't want to work in the government, then figure out what would you like to do, and then you figure out what role AI might play in that. So, for example, if you want to be a filmmaker, today AI technology has become so good that you can create near real looking films without even touching a camera. Yeah. So if that is your ambition, learn that. And you don't need to know a lot of technology these days to use these tools. These tools respond to English commands, yeah, or language commands. You can write the commands in the language you know, and the system will respond. For example, last week we saw a brilliant tool that a philanthropist in US who's of Indian origin has developed. It's called myhappy.health. And this app can converse in 26 languages. Yeah. So if you have a medical condition and you want to spend some time understanding what is happening to you, then it can talk to you in any one of those 26 languages. You don't have to ask a very well-phrased question. You can just say, headache for the last 3 days, and then it'll ask you multiple. So a lot of the technological progress has made it possible for somebody to become a good user of technology without being a technician. So you don't have to get into the mindset that unless I become a good technician, I can't use technology. You can use technology in many, many different ways just by being good at what you want to do. So that's the important part. So don't let others' views or others' perceptions become your limitations. But it goes back to being clear about what you want and then making the effort. So one of the points that you made, Manali, which was perhaps worth emphasizing, is ambition is great. Wanting to be clear about what you want to become is great, but there are very few people who achieve that without making effort. Yeah? So don't expect things to fall into your lap. Yeah? So when people see Suryavanshi batting, they think that, he's just gifted. And of course he's gifted, but he bloody works hard. Yeah, he doesn't achieve that by just assuming that he's going to hit 6 every single time. Yeah. So Sachin Tendulkar or Garfield Sobers, who recently passed away, these people obviously had exceptional talent, but they were exceptional hard workers. Yeah?
True.
They didn't assume that they will succeed just because God has given them some exceptional talent.
Special.
So the role of effort is an important thing to never forget.
Yeah, as you also mentioned, Ashish, before, the skill can be developed only through practice. So it's a kind of similar thing, because one needs to be, the practicing the same thing until or unless he or she accomplish that in life. Keep doing and doing and doing. So yeah. And my last question, probably today's last question: what are the essential skills for 5 years work experience position in industry? So the question itself, it's a kind of vague, but what are the essential skills for 5 years work experience position in industry?
So I guess my part of the answer would be depends on which industry. Yeah.
Yes.
That is a big determinant of the answer. So, for example, if I assume that you are talking about, say, manufacturing industry, yeah, then that would determine part of the answer, because even in the manufacturing setup, you could be in construction, you could be in automotive, you could be in electrical goods. So all those things. So first and foremost, tighten the definition of industry. That will help you look more carefully. And then in terms of skills, I would approach it in two parts. What are the skills that I have that will make me more eligible for getting that position? And what are the skills that I would like to develop using that 5-year period? Yeah. And in interviews, we always see this, that when somebody is able to give a good answer to the question, why should I give you this job? And what do you hope to learn from this? Very often people are able to answer the first part, but they haven't paid attention to the second part. And very often that makes a difference between the winner and loser. Because if you are genuinely interested in that position, you should have spent some time thinking about, how is this going to help me? And it doesn't have to be only in technical terms. It can be, I want to work with people who don't come from my background. That's perfectly valid way to approach this. So for example, if you're working in a project, and the project team is going to have people from different backgrounds like finance and human resources, you will learn something from them also, and they will learn something from you. Yeah. So spend some time thinking about not only why should somebody give you that opportunity, but also about how are you likely to make use of that opportunity. And that makes those people feel that you have shown some interest and you have shown some appreciation of what they can do for you. Yeah? Not just focusing on what you can do for them. Of course, that's important, because that's a first condition you need to fulfill. But if you help people understand that you have spent some time thinking about. Similarly, another question people very often answer badly is, do you have any questions for us? And if your answer is no, then 9 times out of 10, their interpretation would be, oh, this chap is not interested.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because if after all the preparation you've done, you haven't been able to think of a single question to ask, it to them shows this chap is not really interested in the job.
Yes.
Yeah. Or he's not interested in us as an organization, in us as people. Because you can ask a question which is personal and saying, when you started, what was the most challenging thing? And what can I learn from that? That's fine. It doesn't have to be a smart question about how will I grow and things like that. Those are constraints imposed by you. But what you do by asking that question is you make those people feel that, again, A, you're interested, B, you have spent some time thinking about it. And if they feel that you've just turned up without having spent any time preparing, then why should they give the job to you? Especially if there are others who, through their actions, have shown that they have done that. So again, it comes back to thinking about these things in a slightly more complete way, and not in a very linear, very restricted way that, oh, I'm here to answer an interview. If I can answer the interview well, that's it. You can turn the conversation, just like your example that you mentioned before our call started, Manali, where this person from XLRI took those various
Yes.
certificates.
Yes.
Whatever those people were interested in asking completely shifted. And because he was able to answer that question well, they said, yeah, this chap can learn. He's shown an ability to learn. Very often uh, we never find a candidate who has every single skill or attribute that is needed to perform the job well. So people always make adjustments. And very often people are looking for somebody who shows the keenness to learn, who shows the willingness to be open minded. Because you may be only 80% ready, but if you show the willingness to learn the remaining 20%, they're going to give you the chance. If you come
Yes.
across as somebody who's closed minded, the chances are they're saying, oh, he's not ready or she's not ready, and they haven't shown any willingness to learn. Why should we take the risk of offering the opportunity to them?
Yes.
So it's really important to think about these things a little bit and prepare accordingly.
Thank you so much, Ashish, for wonderful and insightful answers. I think my viewers today that we're really glad the kind of discussions we had, and then the way you answered them back to their question. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And now I like to I would like to request Shujata Di to just say in a brief about this Wheels Global Foundation, as because it's very important for our viewer to know also that why we joined NDLI joined their hand with Wheels Global Foundation, because there must be some reason. So Shujata Di, just would you please explain to my viewers?
Sure. Yeah, so as you all know, this webinar is being conducted in collaboration between NDLI and Wheels Global Foundation. So Wheels Global it's actually a not-for-profit organization created by the alumni of all the Indian Institutes of Technology. Actually, it came into existence by the challenge thrown by our earlier president, Dr. Abdul Kalam, when in the year 2006, in a Pan IIT conference, he told the alumni that all of you IITians, you have done so well for yourself. Now, why don't you do something to solve the big problems of the world? And that is when the alumni of many of the IITs, they came together and formed Wheels Global Foundation. That was as early as in 2006. Now in 2026, we have come a long way from there. And now it's not only IITians, but we also have doctors, lawyers, and other professionals within our family. So what's our objective? The objective is to engage the IIT system and its 500,000 plus alumni network to drive technology-based solutions. Yes, technology, which is our strength. So to drive technology-based solutions to solve the problems of rural India. WHEEL stands for Water, Health, Energy, Education, Livelihood, and Sustainability. And we aim to provide clean water, affordable healthcare, renewable energy, access to education, rural livelihoods, and all in a sustainable manner through technology deployment. So then how do we do it? Our bandwidth is limited. So by enabling scaling of tech-enabled solutions through public-private partnerships, academic collaborations, and mobilizing resources like talent, treasure, and connections of the IIT ecosystem, especially its alumni. That's how we finally deliver it. So all of us are volunteers here, and we aim to do our small bit in terms of giving back to the society. Now we have set ourselves a mission to improve the lives of 20% of rural India by 2030 by applying technology. and we are confident of not just meeting but surpassing it. So here, any of you here, if you're interested in joining our movement as a volunteer, please reach out to us and we can always find a suitable role for you. So thank you, and over to Manali.
Thank you so much again, Ashish sir. Wonderful session. I enjoyed the session thoroughly, and my viewers also did the same. I'm certain about it because today when I was just checking the number of the viewers present at a single second, and it was so good. I'm so glad to see the today's presence in YouTube. And Sujata di, thank you so much once again. As you know, I always mention in every show, our association with Fields Global Foundations is possible as because she is the main pillar for us. I mean, whatever the topic, who is going to be guest, everything is decided by Sujata Di, and that is how this
Thank you.
show looks so beautiful,
Thank you
so
so much.
informative and engaging. And Ashish sir, once again, thank you so much for joining us from such a the far away place, and there it must be very important time for you. I mean, now we are 6 and you are there at 2:30 or so, right? So
1:30.
I
Yeah.
can understand.
130.
Yeah, so this time is very busy for you, but being a very busy person, still you found time for us. That's wonderful, Sujata di. Thank you once again, and a big thanks to all of my viewers who stayed with us for this time period. Thank you so much for joining us, and we
Thank
will
you.
see you
Thank you for the
yet.
opportunity.
Thank you, and very soon, next month again we will see you in our global event. Thank you so much, all of you. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.